Hello and welcome to our second series of our share with the on the Parsha of the Shavua with the commentary of the Alshich HaKodesh. This week's share is sponsored for the Refuah Shlema of Arya Chaim ben Chana Yehudis. Those of you who have been with me for a while will know that's a little boy who needs our Refuah Shlema, and hopefully our share will help him on the way to exactly that. If you would like to sponsor the share, for someone who's not well, or to celebrate some nice Jewish simcha, to commemorate somebody who's passed away. And somebody actually sent me a little message saying, how much is the sponsorship? It's $180. That's 10 times high, which of course is also some nice Kabbalistic things. And there's bound to be somebody in your life you'd like to commemorate or celebrate for a mere $180. And I'm not sure how much that is in euros or in pounds. I think it's 10 Bitcoin. I'm very happy to accept Bitcoin. Anyway, this week's Parsha is the Parsha of Terumah. And the Parsha of Terumah is when the Jewish people are asked to give various items for the building, the construction of the Mishkan, which of course is the precursor to the Beis HaMikdash. They're supposed to give wool, and they're supposed to give copper and various other precious metals in order to construct this special building. And as the Pasuk says, well, let's turn to the Pasuk, and here we have my standard little art scroll chumash, which I'm quite fond of, and it says the following thing: V'daber Hashem al Moshe Pasuk Aleph, Lemor to say to him, Daber of Israel with the Jewish people, V'yichu li Truma. Now the Alshich is going to be troubled, as all the commentators are troubled with, and they will take for me Truma, it should be, and they will give to me Truma. If you will take from me? We'll see what the Alshich has to say about that. Or one of the things the Alshich has to say about that, I should say, shortly. A me'ez kol ish, from every person, every in the singular, before it's in the plural, the yichul, and they will take truma, me'ez kol ish, from every individual, asher yedarein liboy, whose heart is willing to make that commitment. Techu estromasi, you will take my truma. And then it says what they all are. Zohov, gold, kesel, silver, nechoshes, copper, techeles, argon, various materials, various, how does it translate it here? And turquoise, purple, and scarlet wool. Okay, so now we know. And all of these are to be given for the construction of the Beis HaMikdash. That's all we're going to have to look at, so we don't need to share the screen for that one tonight. So obviously the question is exactly what is this relationship and what's this giving for the building of the Mishkan? And HaShem needs these things. They're also just going to tell us something very important about that. But before we get to the concept of the giving, let's consider the concept of the Beis HaMikdash, or its precursor, as we said, the Mishkan itself. There is, of course, as everybody knows, there are various things contained within the Mishkan, various pieces of the words I'm about to use are a bit pedestrian and mundane, bearing in mind what we're talking about. But pieces of furniture, there's an altar, and there is a table, and various other things. And of course, there's the Holy of Holies, and in the Holy of Holies is contained a box, a gold box, in which is contained the luchot, the luchos, the 10 Commandments, which of course was sapphire, made out of sapphire, and the two sets, the broken ones, the one that Moshe broke, and the ones which were complete, and they were in there, and that was only accessed, this place was only accessed by the Kohen Gadol in Yom Kippur. The holiness of it was so intense that if you try to approach it without all the preparation that Yom Kippur prepares you for, then you would be in serious trouble. In fact, you would die. Okay, so one of the things, just to give you an example, to take us to the point of what the Mishkan really is, there is, although we'll see other aspects of this very shortly, but one of the things you're supposed to do is to construct the box, as I said, the Oran, but on top of the box, there is the lid of the box, and that's got a very interesting name in Hebrew. It's called the Parish, and the Parish comes from, as I mentioned a second ago, Yom Kippur. The Parish comes from the word Kippur, Kippur. So the lid of the box is called the Parish. Now, if you picture that in your mind, it was gold. It had a little ledge going around it, edge going around it, of fine gold work. And it also had two kruvim, two statues, statue of a cherub. Well, exactly what cherub is not terribly sure. Some sort of spiritual, mystical creature, a bit like an angel. But there was one had the face of a boy and one had the face of a girl, and they looked at each other, and their wings came across, so they almost touched. And it was from that point, just the near intersection of the two angels or seraphim's wings. That's where Hashem's voice would speak to Moshe from. Interesting. Okay. Now, the interesting thing here is the dimensions of this interesting, strange thing, the Parish. What are the dimensions of the Parish? So let's see if we can find this. I thought I had my marker here, but my marker is fallen out, which is rather embarrassing. I'm very sorry. You have to be delayed, but there it is. I have got it. Well, nearly got it. Yes, now I have it. So the Alshich says, and just in case you have this edition of the Alshich at home, it's in page Reish Samach Zayin, and there the pasuk says this: "Asisa kaparis zohov." You should make the kaparis, the lid, to be zohov, gold, tar, pure gold, and masayim v'chetzi arko. Its length will be an amma and a half. What's an amma, I hear you say? So an amma is the length of a man's fist to his elbow. So in my case, that would be about 1.5 feet, I'm guessing. Yes, roughly 1.5 feet, right? So that is and that is split into, a tefach is a fist. So if we were to count these, you would get 6 fists in an amma. Now that's going to be critical. These are, of course, classic measurements. And very interesting, very, very many cultures. The human body was used as the structure from which people built or measured the metric, or used the metric that we're going to use for constructing a building. And I suppose that makes perfect sense, just thinking as I'm speaking to you now, because after all, it would be human bodies that would be constructing stuff. So to use the metric of a human body makes a lot of sense. The span of a man's arms, because that's how he would stretch, and so that makes perfect sense when you think about it, which I'd never done until this sheer a second ago. Anyway, so the interesting thing is that it's called the Parish, and the Alshich says here it's the Parish because there is only there's a hint there. There's a time in your life, apart from Yom Kippur itself, which of course is there to offer atonement, but there's one time which is guaranteed in your life when you're going to get kapara, and that is when you're going to get atonement, and that is when you get married. When a Jewish man or a Jewish woman stand underneath the chuppah, Hashem's wedding gift to them is that all the things they've done wrong till that point in time, the slate is wiped clean. My gift to you, he says, is a completely clean slate. Now, like any beautiful gift, special gift that you received, perhaps maybe a beautiful crystal bowl, it's wonderful to have it, but you've got to take care of it because it's easy to drop it and smash it. So now that you've been given the opportunity that the mistakes you've made in the past are now forgotten and wiped clean, be careful not to drop that gift and do the same things, make the same mistakes all over again. However, there's something very interesting the Alshich says here. I'll read a little bit to you. Ashir ha'inyan, b'skusa Torah she'oska beremez ba'oren tiska l'zivug Torah. Because if you are inside as we said, inside the oren is the luchos of the Ten Commandments. That's symbolic, obviously, of the Torah. But the lid, then there's something else. If you've got Hashem running through your marriage, then naturally you're going to have a very blessed marriage, and that's hinted at in the measurements, and the metric, and the dimensions of the oren itself. So we said, as I'll read that to you again, how long has it got to be? It's got to be a masayim bechetzi. That is, we said, 2 amas, right, 2 of these, and a half. So therefore we said these, it's altogether, if it's 6 fists, so that's a tefach. So therefore, if we turn our 2.5 amas, if we express it in in the fist measure that we had before, the tefachim, then we get 15. Now does that make sense? Let's do that again. 1.5 is a tefach is 1.5, which we said is going to be six tefachim, and therefore 2 amas, 2 elbow lengths, is going to be 12.5. That takes us obviously to 15. And 15, when it comes to marriage, is a significant number. A significant number because, of course, the Hebrew word for a man is an ish. The Hebrew word for an isha, the Hebrew word, I lost my dramatic moment there. The Hebrew word for a woman is isha. So they both share same letter, aleph and shin. In the case of a man, it's got a yud in the middle, ish. In the case of a woman, it's got a hey at the end, isha. And of course, a yud in the man's name and the hey in the woman's name is a yud and a hey. Yud's 10, hey's 5, 15. And the idea, one of the ideas is that if you have yud hey, if you have HaShem, because HaShem, his name is yud hey, or one of his names is yud hey. If you get 15, the mathematical representation of HaShem, running through the length of your marriage, then it will be gold indeed. But also, there's a very nice idea that the width of the lid. Well, let me go back and read that to you. So it says, and it's 1.5 amas in width, 2.5 amas in length, 1.5 amas in width, which takes us to 9. And it's interesting, says the Alshich, when Hashem makes Adam and Chava, he says, V'kora Shemom, and he will call their name Adam. He will call their name Adam. Interesting. Now, if you count up Adam, we'll just actually use the numbers here. Aleph, as obviously, is 1. Daled, Adam, is 4. Mem is 40, but let's get rid of that nothing, because nothing's nothing. It's 4 tens, really. But of course, if you what's called a mispar cotton, if you get rid of the zeros, and you just stick to the actual multiplier, the 4s, so you get 4 and 1 is 9. And that's very interesting because that's Adam. The 9, you call their name Adam. They will become like one, Adam. You'll call both of them Adam. They'll become like one person. And if you have Torah is the basis of the foundation, perhaps, on which the lid, the golden lid, which represents a marriage, if you get Hashem running through the length of it, and it will then present you with the possibility of becoming one person. Everybody knows the famous story about Rabbi Levine, the great tzaddik of Yerushalayim, when once he took his wife to the doctors because there's something wrong with her foot, and the doctor was very excited to see this great tzaddik and said, Rabbi, how can I help you? And he says, not me, it's my wife. My wife's foot hurts us. My wife's foot hurts us. And it's a beautiful thing to see an old couple who are become so much one that that's exactly how they see each other and express their perception of each other. We're one person. Well, if you base your Torah marriage on Hashem and his Torah, then you have Hashem running through, and Hashem's running through. Oh, if you got Hashem running through the length of it, that would say the Yud and the Hey, but then that's great. If you take the Yud and the Hey away, if you take the Yud away from Ish, you're left with Ish, fire. If you take the Hey away from the woman, you're left with fire. In other words, without the input of Hashem in your marriage, you're likely to have some sort of conflict or conflagration. Not such a good idea. But you'll also be given through the width of it. The width of it will also be symbolic, and the symbolism is that you'll become like one person. And then, of course, you'll be blessed with a little boy and a little girl, from which a person fulfills the mitzvah of pruruvu, having the mitzvah of producing the next generation is when you have at least one boy and one girl, and that's exactly what you're supposed to be having. That's the idea, the concept of the symbolism. Not quite sure symbolism is the right word there. It's the reference of the dimensions is a reference to how marriage works. But that point is in actual fact symbolic of the entirety of the Mishkan. Every single aspect of the Mishkan, every single dimension of the structure, and indeed what the structure is, it's what the materials that are used there. If you go into it in the depth, which the Zohar does, the various Midrashim do, it's revealing aspects of human existence. So, for example, the Oren, as we said, in which the lid we were just discussing, the Parish contains the Torah, it symbolizes Torah. But not just symbolizes Torah, the idea of how to succeed in Torah is contained within and referenced in the dimensions and the structure and the materials used. The Shulchan apparently refers to the Kahuna, the priesthood, and the Mizbeach, that refers to Malchus, to the kingship. But that's only just some of the insights and some of the references of human existence that the Mishkan interfaces with, connects to. So there's that concept when it comes to the Beis Hamikdash. People were able to give gifts, were invited to give gifts. Sounds funny, give gifts, donate gifts. I think that would be good. Donate materials for the creating of something which will speak to them and instruct them in human existence and their human existence. So it's very interesting. Let's have a look at the Alshich when he talks about this concept of the giving from us and the receiving of HaShem. Now, there's going to be two obvious points here. HaShem doesn't need this stuff, does he? Clearly not. After all, he created gold and silver and copper and wool, sheep and all that sort of stuff that produces wool. So what's this that you're giving him? And anyway, it belonged to him in the first place. You've only got it because he gave it to you. Now you're giving it back to him. There's a million things to say on that point. But I think I want to read to you a little bit of the Alshich here. And then after that, we're going to look at Shlomo Wolbe and what he has to say. We'll have on the Gemara and Brochus and that Zion over Aleph. And we're also going to have a look at Rabbi Dessler and what he has to say. Oh, and one last thing, we're going to look at Tomer Devorah. And I'm going to tell you a story from last week when a little boy who was just 13 years of age, in fact, had the great privilege, and it was a privilege, and a very pleasant one, when his dad brought him to me to put on his tefillin, and show him how to put on tefillin for the first time. He's a very, very sweet boy. It's called Yehuda. I'm not sure if I should tell you his second name because he might get very embarrassed. But in case he doesn't, it's called Jowitz. Yehuda Jowitz. Lovely little boy. Anyway, so basically he asked a fabulous, fabulous question, which I'll share with you shortly. But anyway, let's see what the Alshich has to say in this concept of giving to the Mishkan. And it's an interesting insight into human psychology. The previous bit was, the rest were things that we're talking about was a bit Kabbalistic and mystical. This is human nature, really, psychology. One, he says the following thing. Keep emes in ish cotton herach yitin matonul asar v'godel. If an ordinary, a villager, peasant, was to give a gift to somebody who was a duke, lord, or indeed a king, or a queen, where I come from, of course, we have a queen. And I've seen many, many times picture when she arrives to maybe open a hospital or open some other important building or achievement, structural, architectural achievement. And then very often there's and particularly schools, there's a little girl there in a beautiful little dress who curtsies before the queen and presents her with a posy of flowers. And it's very, very pretty, very, very gorgeous thing to see. Her little face is all lit up, and the queen bows down and collects her little bunch of flowers. And it's a very nice thing. And she walks away with them for a few steps. Then she gives it to one of her ladies in waiting to hold for her. But it's a nice thing to see. And of course, if you were that little girl, or I suppose a little boy, and presented that to the queen, the fact that the queen took your gift, well, that makes you feel really very good. Here we're invited to offer something to HaShem, but it's going to be a feel-good factor. He accepts it from us. So let me read that to you. Kibe'emes in ish cotton, if an ordinary little fellow, Amir Rubinstein, Herachitin, if he thinks to himself he's going to give a present to Sar HaGodel, the Godel, the Yikabel, and the prince, the king, whoever it is, takes it from his hand, then Halo Hanoisin of the Kabel Yashav Masha Yashav Bemena Achshivs the Kachas Miyadi. The thing that's really exciting for the giver is the fact that the important person took it from him. Wow, he took my gift. And not only that, the Gemara says in Kedushin, that's I know a famous story. We all know that when a man marries a woman, then he has to give something to her, kesef, star, various other things that he can give to her. But it's interesting. Can a woman ever give something to a man? I'm going to go off slightly a tangent. What is it that you're giving to her? It's an exchange. We're now talking about it's a contract. It's a purchase. The man is giving maybe a gold ring in order to get something from the woman. It's an exchange. You get the gold ring, and I'm giving something to you. What is it the woman gives in exchange for that gold ring or that document? She gives away her right to marry anybody else. So in accepting this gift from this man, for the sake of marriage, she's relinquishing her right to marry any other person. And only the death of that husband or a divorce from that husband, when he gives back that right to her, that's what get is, releases her from that commitment. That's how that works. So it has to be the man giving to the woman. Can the woman ever give to the man? And the Gemara says in a very, very certain circumstances. That is to say, you see, if you're giving something to the woman, like money, like a financial thing, then she's gaining something. It's giving her certain pleasure, certain enjoyment, certain benefits. There is a way which she could give something to a man, and she gains pleasure, enjoyment from the fact that he accepts it from her. Very similar to the story we're talking about before. And that is that she gave to the man, and he accepted it from her. And the man was some great tzaddik, maybe think of the Chofetz Chaim, then she would get tremendous pleasure in the fact that he accepted her gift. So him accepting it gives her pleasure, the same way as getting the money or the gold ring or whatever it does. And that would also constitute a Jewish marriage. That would be an exception to the normal rule, where the woman is that's right, giving, but getting through the giving. So he says that's the exact same thing. When HaShem accepts our gift, we're getting something enormous from that. And the enormous thing that we're getting from that is the fact that he accepted it. So really, it turns out that the giver becomes the getter. So therefore he says, in Adam Choshev Bekodeshes, if the woman gives something to the man and he accepts the gift, then indeed that would constitute a marriage. Because she gets a benefit from that exchange. But that's the exact same as if he gave her something in the normal way, like the gold ring. It's similar. He is giving her something by the act of acceptance. Odd chain is a second thing. But the rabbis tell us, and this is the Medrash Rabbah, when it comes to tzedakah, the Gemara said, this is a well-known repeating theme throughout Judaism, more than you ever give to the person who is the poor person you're giving money to, you're getting from him. You might give him money for food to fill his stomach for a day, but in accepting that from you, then he is giving to you a place in Olam Haba, which is a lot more. Now, if that is the case when it's just a normal act of kindness, a normal act of tzedakah or chesed, when you're giving somebody money to buy food for the day, but he's giving you something much more in return. Suppose you're giving to HaShem Yisbarach something, which of course ultimately he doesn't need, but what's he giving back to you? And indeed, Olam Hazeh and Olam Haba. So there's this dualism going on here. So it looks as though you're the giver, but sometimes the giver becomes the getter. And that's what b'yichuli. Instead of you'll give to me, you'll take from me. You'll take from me something which is enormous, either Olam Haba, or by the fact that I have accepted your gift, that will give you something special. This leads into something else the Alshich says. I hope that's clear. And the Alshich says that. Let me read a little bit more to you. So these two concepts that we've now discussed, let's remind ourselves that you're honored by the fact that somebody very, very special, like a king or a queen, accepts your gift. Or two, that the actual act of the and that was the idea we said about when the woman gives to the Talmud Chacham, to the Chofetz Chaim or something like that, she's actually getting back. And the second thing is that more than you're ever giving to the poor person, he's giving to you by accepting, because he's getting you a place in the Olam Haba. So he says, and this is very interesting the way the Alshich frames this, he says, and these two concepts are apparent here more clearly than any other place in the Torah. These two concepts we mentioned before in the giving the money for the Mishkan. In giving the things which Hashem is going to take to construct a place where He will sit, where He will dwell, then that's the first aspect where we're talking about the fact that He takes it from you. And He's going to be seen there amongst you, living amongst you as a consequence. Wow, that gives you quite an honor, the fact that He's accepted it and allowed His presence to be sitting amongst Klal Yisrael. In the yes Nisan of Makabel B'nei Adam, Al Yisrael Chashivas Ma Makabel Ela Nisan. Obviously, He's giving you a lot more than you're actually giving Him. Yashruf and Nisan of Makabel. It turns out the giver is really the getter. The person who's doing the giving now becomes the receiver. By giving this thing to Hashem, which He doesn't need, but the fact that you are willing to give it, give your gold, give your silver, give all these valuable things, then Hashem in return is going to give you so much more. And the Mishkan will now be manifest the presence of Hashem in it. Okay. And so he says, Yoshua, Nazam Lakabo, Magam Atam Melech Malchim Malachim, Yotzakol, Sabalin Lakakas, Trumala Asas Loi Miktash. But the fact that Hashem took your gift, well, if the king or queen, the Queen of England, took the little posy of roses or flowers or tulips from the little girl, then she would feel so much better. She would be so elevated as a consequence. How much more are we elevated as Hashem accepts our gift? The fact that Hashem is taking it from our hands, wow. So that's why it's not really, we're not really giving, we're taking, we're getting back. That's why it says, you will take from each Terumah. Shouldn't say you will give. No, because you're getting so much more back. It's not really a giving, it's a getting. You're getting so much more. Point 2, he says, the second point. Let's remind yourself what the second point was. Turn over the page again. And that is, then by the fact that you are giving, that what you're getting back in return is exponentially greater. In suffix, no doubt, what He's going to give us back is much more exponentially greater than what we're giving to Him. Because the things that we're giving Him are, at the end of the day, only physical, material things. God doesn't value gold. It's meaningless to God, meaningful to us. Silver, these are all material things. That doesn't compare to what He's giving back to us as a consequence. So that we're talking here about a flipping of perspectives. The flipping of the perspective is you think you're the giver, giving to God. No, it's the other way about. You're getting so much more back. You become the Am HaNifker through this giving, the chosen people. You become somebody who is given something which is, frankly, pretty worthless. And instead, you get the Shekinah dwelling amongst you. It flips around. It's sort of like different ways of looking at things. But let's stick with that theme of different ways of looking at things. Oh, I would point out, the Alshich goes on to say, because we did raise the question, so let's look at it again. So what happens is, it says, Hashem says, bring Terumah me'ez kol b'nei Yisrael. Don't make the mistake of thinking that Hashem's like any other king, that really He wants all His people to give X amount of tax revenue, and He wants at the end of the day, whatever, Y amount of money. And as long as He's got Y, He doesn't care who gave. Hashem says, then swaps to the singular. Everybody who gives, and it's in the singular tense, called Ish Asher Yivnei Levi. I value the gift of every single person. Don't think that your gift is subsumed in the enormous number of others doing the same thing. He still sees it. He still values it. It's as important as everybody else. Fine. That's the Alshich that we're going to be looking at here. I want to stick with this idea, this concept of that it's a flip. It's the different way of seeing things. And therefore, with that, I have to tell you about this little boy, Yehuda Javitz, who's 13 years of age, who just asked me last Shabbos, with his daddy standing there, proud, chest expanding, said, my son wants to know the following thing. There is a theme that runs through Talmudic literature that in giving the Torah to us, HaShem also does mitzvahs. HaShem also keeps the Torah. Now, I'm not going to go into that in too much depth tonight. However, that was the basis of this little boy's question. So you could imagine, and we've got that for tomorrow night, of course, is Shabbos. We rest in Shabbos because HaShem rested in Shabbos. Oh, HaShem keeps Shabbos. There's the idea we wear tefillin, and we've got a picture of Moshe Rabbeinu sees HaShem wearing tefillin. It seems there's some sort of mirror imaging or echo going on, HaShem keeping the Torah. I say, I'm not going to go too deeply into that. However, he had a really brilliant question. It was fabulous. 13-year-old boy. How can Hashem do kibbud avim? One of the 10 commandments, certainly the Tariq mitzvahs, is honoring your mother and your father. I can see him wearing tefillin, whatever that means. I can certainly understand him keeping Shabbos. Again, there's so much to say about that, but at least you can have just a little grasp of that concept. But he keeps kibbud avim. That's a very dangerous sounding suggestion. And what does that mean? So there's a sefer called Terumah Devorah. Terumah Devorah, if you've not come across it, is one of the classics. The Alshich's teacher, Moshe Cordovero, wrote Terumah Devorah. The first chapter of it is it's all based on the 13 attributes of God's nature, which we are supposed to have within us and supposed to manifest and copy his behavior. As he is merciful, you could be merciful. As he is kind, you could be kind, etc. And when it comes to an analysis of these 13 attributes, which is what is the basis of this sefer, the first chapter is really quite a rational analysis. After that, it is pure Kabbalah. And I say he was the teacher, the Kabbalah teacher of the Alshich. So we're talking about Sfas, the 16th century. But when he talks about the fourth concept is God looks upon us as his family. Listen to what it says here. He says, yes, Hashem looks on us, the Jewish people, as being his family. I'll read this to you. Hashem deals with Jewish people as though, in that way, like a father or a mother with their child. What can I do with these children, even if they're badly behaved? What? Him Karobai, Cherub. They're my flesh and blood. They're my family. One posuk refers to us as being a daughter of Hashem. The posuk says, Biti. Another posuk says we're his sister. But here's the big one. Imi, my mother. Hashem refers to us as his mother. Does that make any sense whatsoever? Now that sounds particularly dangerous. It sounds too much like a well-known religion in the world, rather big one. Hashem doesn't have a mother. What does that mean? The answer is very simple. We'll see this idea now when we go into this in a little bit more depth with Shlomo Wolbe's eyes and Rabbi Dessner. But what does it mean? That the idea is, by referring to the Jewish people as Hashem's mother, it means a mother brings somebody into the world. They give birth to somebody. That's the role of the Jewish people. The Jewish people bring Hashem into the world. When we get it right, I should say, when we get it right, when we're the Am HaNivka, indeed the chosen people, When we copy the 13 attributes of God, and people say, wow, these Jewish people are so fabulous, and they're trying to copy God, so God must be fabulous. We are making a Kiddush Hashem, we are bringing God into the world. Then, in a sense, we are fulfilling the role of a mother, delivering, bringing Hashem into the world. That's all it means. So therefore, when it says Hashem, or when this little boy asked me, how can Hashem do kibbutz avim? By looking at us as the people who bring him into the world, he's giving cover to us when we do that. That's all it means. Not too controversial. He was quite pleased with that answer, my 13-year-old little friend, and I was quite pleased that he was pleased. Rav Shlomo Wolbe and Ali Shar, in the second volume of Ali Shar, quotes the Gemara, a remarkable Gemara, which is in Brochus Daf Zayin Amud Aleph. And this is what the Gemara says. I hope you're sitting down for this one. Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Mashum Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yochanan says, in the name of Rabbi Yossi, how do I know that God prays? God prays? Now remember, just what we said before, when we're talking about the Mishkan, and we're talking about giving money to the Mishkan. You look as though you're the giver, no, you're the getter. What you see, what it seems to be, that he's the receiver and you're the giver. No, actually it's the other way about. Well, let's keep this mirror image reversal concept as we go a little bit further. How do I know that Hashem davens? Strange question. This is even worse than imagining God has a mother, which we've now explained. But God prays? To whom? Rabbi Yossi Menashe Kadosh Baruch Hu, my mitzli, what does he pray? Omer Rav Zutra Bar Tuvia, Omer Rav. So somebody called Omer Rav Zutra, the son of Tuvia, Omer Rav, in the name of Rav. Yehiratson, this is what he prays. Yehiratson Malafonai, let it be my will. Sheikasha Rachmei as Kasai, that my character trait of mercy should always conquer my strict character trait of din, of judgment. And I always interact with the Jewish people, value the Jewish people, and judge them beyond the strict letter of the law. Interesting. So that's what Hashem says to himself. Now, as we're supposed to copy God's behavior, and as I said before, by seeing our behavior, you get an idea of God. I'm just wondering, when I was preparing this earlier, my Rov told me, the Gates of Drov, Rabbi Rakov, Zechatzadlik Livrocha, Rabbi Tzal Rakov, that the Chofetz Chaim often used to speak to himself and say, Yisrael Meir, I'm surprised you did that. I'm really surprised at you. If you'd done something that you thought you shouldn't have done. So this idea of speaking to yourself is, if we can reverse that, is what it says, Hashem's praise. What does he pray? Let it be my will. I'm just wondering if in Hashem letting us know that is to let us know that it's appropriate for us to talk to ourselves and speak to ourselves in a sort of almost like we're two people. In a sense, we're the body and the soul, and almost let your soul speak to you, say, because the inclination to do bad stuff is the physical, and the spiritual, of course, is the counterbalancing ethical and moral thing. So the voice saying, Yehudi, how did you do that? I can't believe you gave in to that. It's all right. Then Hashem is showing you that's an approach by saying, explaining to us that that's what he does. Let's read another little bit. We'll go back to Yom Kippur. Tanya, the Brisa says, Omer Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha. Rabbi Shmuel ben Elisha says, Pamachas, he was a Kohen called Godel. Once, once he went into the Holy of Holies. And I saw a vision of Hashem, and he used a very strict formula of word, which is different, an insight which he had into Hashem's name. It's got a formula which we're not going to go into. He was sitting in a very high throne. And he said to him, my son, bless me. My son, bless me. Hashem needs our blessing. Amarti loy, I said to him, as he's been invited to bless Hashem, here it's sign v'fanecha. Let it be your will. Sheyikavshem rachamecha es kasecha v'yigala rachamecha al midasecha v'yasnagi im banecha b'midas rachim. Let your merciful side always conquer your strict side, and you should always be merciful to your children, to Klal Yisrael. But the Kodesh Lahem Lifnim B'Shur Sadin, as we said before, and you should always treat them beyond the strict letter of the law. And then Ali, from which the Gemara says, and from which we learn again, once again, us. From this interaction, we are supposed to learn something. Don't let the blessing of a simple Jew be irrelevant in your eyes. Don't dismiss it. And Birchas said it, the blessing of a simple Jew can be very, very valuable indeed. How do we know that? God invited one of his creatures, one of his creations, to give him a blessing. You should also welcome somebody who is, as it were, inferior to you, doesn't have your intellect, doesn't have your learning, doesn't have your whatever it is. Still welcome his participation. Let's just see what Rabbi Desta has to say about this Gemara, and then we will be finished. And Rabbi Desta says, and you'll find this in 244 of volume 5, and my marker is in place. So he says the following thing, and this will take us once again into strange territory. Vayhi b'shalom sukkoi, Omar Rebrechia. Rebrechia says, forget that bit. That's where we'll start with Rebrechia. Amar Rebrechia. At the beginning of the creation of the world, also we have the idea that Hashem created the world. He started off with Yerushalayim. That's the highest point of the world. I know it's not, because if you're looking at it from sea level, but if that was the first place that the world was constructed, and then, as it were, the rest from it, then in that sense, it's the highest point of the world. So he created a sukkah, a dwelling place in Yerushalayim. Now, of course, in the future, he was going to have a dwelling place in Yerushalayim, the first temple, the second temple, and of course, speedily, hopefully, in our own days, the third temple, the one that will never be destroyed. So, but there was a prototype, and with the creation of the world, Hashem created this prototype, this first temple, if you like. And it's the temple is where people go to pray. It's as though Hashem himself prayed there. You hear it sign, and this is different to what we said before. His prayer was, let it be my will that my children always do that which I want them to do. Let me read that to you again. I don't want to get that wrong. You hear it sign, yeah, let it be the case, or let it be my will. My children will do my will. And that's a medrash in Tehillim. And Reb Aaron Karliner, who's a famous Hasidic Rebbe, he says, the Sefer in his Sefer, Dahaina al derech Yishmael b'ni b'chani. This idea is the exact same idea that we just explored a minute ago when Rabbi Shmuel he said to the rabbi to give me a blessing. And he said, your blessing should be that you never be too angry with the Jewish people. What does that mean? Kalomer, laharas lona inyan tenu oizlakim. This idea is that you should bless me. Kalomer laharas lona, show us that you are giving honor to God. Should be a dano who the side she galu kabadi is barak yatzel apoil be ashreto shazay in habruch. The word brorach means to spread out, to enlarge. What he was saying to him was that and here in this case here, when I'm going to daven, that my children should always do my will, which will allow me as a consequence to be seen in the world, that they will bring me into the world. Barachani, when he said to him, give me a blessing, to bless is to increase my place in the world, my presence, so that people see me in the world. That's going to be through you as well. So there is a relationship going on. In the base of Mikdash, you look as though you're doing the giving. No, you're not doing the giving. You're getting so much more back. But there is a contract here. There is a way in which you are giving to God, and that's by the using of your bechira to behave like Hashem, so that people see reflected through you Hashem, and that brings Hashem into the world. Give me a brocha. And brocha means as the Gemara we were talking about before, increase me in the world. And that's by you being more godly, being more like Hashem. The more people see you, and famously the Ramban says in his Igeris HaKodesh, it's only people who are religious Jews who ultimately will make a Kiddush Hashem or a Chilul Hashem. Because if a religious Jew dresses like a religious Jew, he's got all the books in his study, as you can see in the background of my study here, but he behaves as an obnoxious person and does terrible things. And sadly, recently in the past, we've heard terrible stories exactly of that sort of person. When people say, well, these Jews are meant to be copying God, that's what that book, Tomer Devorah, is all based on. That's what the Gemara talks about. And that's how they behave. That must be how God behaves. Now, a non-religious Jew, they won't make that calculation. The non-religious Jew doesn't claim in his or her life to be, as it were, reflecting God. They probably say they don't believe in God. But the ones who do reflect and advertise their belief and imagined loyalty to God behave terribly, then only they can make a Chilul Hashem. But the converse is true as well. Only they can make a Kiddush Hashem. That's what he said, bless me, increase me. That's why you can become my Imi, my mother. Then it's over to you. That Hashem makes himself vulnerable in a sense by giving us Bechira so that we can choose to make him great, to bring Hashem into the world. I'll give you so much more back than you give to me, but just give me a chance to come into the world. And I'll do that. I'll let you do that. I'll stand back to allow you to besmirch my name and my reputation, or to make it great, to make it so great that I'll allow you to build a special place called a Mishkan, or a base of Mikdash in Yerushalayim, where the whole world will see the Jewish people, hopefully at their best, and have a proper glimpse, a proper comprehension of what Hashem really is, so that the whole world wants to join and be part of Hashem's message and Hashem's mission for the planet. I look forward to seeing you again next week. I wish you all a very good Shabbos.